Welcome to the Album of Record podcast. I'm Craig Lindell, joined as always by Andrew Schnitke. How's it going, Andrew?
Well, that's a tricky question, Craig. I feel like I should say it's going good. Got my alma mater, Ohio State, playing for a national championship this weekend. Excited about that. Cleveland Cavaliers are rolling. They're fun to watch every night. The basketball team I'm coaching is 5-1 on the season. We got a big rematch on Saturday against the only team that's beaten us so far. Got some exciting new vinyl that both came and is on its way that I'm excited
Have you gone
about.
Bobby Knight and thrown a chair across the court yet?
No. I'm an encouraging coach. But yeah, so like it's on the surface, everything's going really good, but I gotta be honest.
Doesn't form at your mouth like Krzyzewski.
Yeah, no, not so much. But but yeah,
if you want to get a performance out of middle school basketball players, you really got to light them up.
Well, it is interesting, like trying to keep 7th grade boys' attention for an hour 15 practice. Like it's even like in the games, like it's challenging. Like sometimes you'll like tell them and everybody's looking you in the eye and nodding like, yeah, okay, we'll do this. And then they go out on the court and they don't do any of what you just told them. Yeah. So, it's a challenge, but it's been a fun challenge. I've really enjoyed it. Coaching. I've liked it a lot more than I expected I would. But yeah. But so those are all good things. But if I'm being honest, man, this Ohio winter is just beating me down this year. I'm so over. It's been so cold here and more snow than we've had in the last several years. I'm just tired of it, man. I'm ready for some warm weather.
Yeah, and all due respect to the weather catastrophes and all the different horrible things that are going on in the world with fires and in California, our little corner of the world doesn't rank on that scale. But this, to your point, for us with this Ohio winter, this has been one of the worst Ohio winters in maybe the last 10 years.
Yeah, I mean, it has been a while since we've had one this just brutally cold too. Like usually January doesn't get this cold. Like usually it's like February. Like the way I'm feeling now is usually the way I start to feel in February, where it's like, all right, but like at least when it's February, we got March right around the corner. And yes, we get snow and cold in March, but we also get shorts weather in March too. Like March is wild. March is crazy in Ohio. Like
I've always maintained my birthday's in February, but I've always maintained February is by far the worst month for anybody who's from Ohio. It's like the slushiest month.
Yes.
It's just,
and you're just over it. You're just like, okay, I've had it enough. But because like I'm the type of person like
the shortest month that actually feels like the longest month.
Yes, it is so true. But I'm the type of person that always like the first snow, like I like it. It's like it's pretty. It's I don't know. I find something peaceful and relaxing about that first snow. But when we've had snow on the ground for a couple weeks now, and it's just been bitter cold, bone chilling cold, and I'm done with it. And we don't even have any good new music yet in 2025 to.
Well, and that was a question I asked you this morning in Discord. Is it fair to say that a year is off to a slow start if it's only the 16th? And you said yes.
Yeah, because I feel like usually at this point I've got some albums that like are right on the near horizon. Like we did our episode of albums that we're looking forward to in 2025, and there was a lot of albums and artists that we talked about. But like the thing is none of the ones we talked about have a release date yet. Like I'm sitting here like I have nothing on my list really. Like I've got a couple smaller things. There's a really interesting sounding shoegaze abandoned album, and I forget the name of it already, but I heard their first single. That was exciting. That's coming out in February. No, not that one. Because they didn't announce an album. They just put out a song. It's something else that Stereo Gum had like months ago that I put on my list. So I've got that coming in February, which I'm excited for it, but it's not like a big thing that a lot of people. I'd never heard of this band. I can't even remember their name off the top of my head. I just know it's coming. Jason Isbell announced the solo album, which I'll listen to, but I think that's coming out in March. So, I mean,
The best was back in 2023 when we got the surprise 1/1 release of Higher Lonely Power by Fireworks.
yeah, that was a
And
nice
it
surprise.
paid dividends for them too. If that album had been released in May in the midst of a huge busy calendar of new music, it wouldn't have gotten the same attention from me that it
Yeah.
got, because it was released in a time when new music was scarce.
Yeah, I didn't love that album beginning to end. I thought it started really strong and then kind of got a little samey in the second half for me. But it was still a pleasant surprise, and I listened to it. To your point, I listened to it way more than I would have if it would have come out in the middle of the busy time for new music. But yeah, I
Yeah.
don't know. I'm just eager for whatever that first album is that's going to grab my attention and really stick with me, and I've yet to have that happen. There's a band called Anxious that I wasn't super familiar with, that I've started to hear a decent amount of buzz about. I think I know Ian Cohen mentioned him on IndieCast last week, which, by the way, I think I'm going to boycott IndieCast for a while with their Ohio State slander on that podcast. If we can have an imaginary podcast beef, I've got podcast beef with the IndieCast, especially Stephen Hayden. He's on my list. But anyways,
It's jealousy. They're old and grumpy like we are. They just
yeah,
happen to be
exactly.
jealous of Ohio State.
They just don't
And
live in Ohio, so
you know what? And to his point, though, you get annoyed by Ohio State fans too. You just don't want outsiders to make fun of Ohio State fans.
no, I agreed with Ian Cohen's point when he like said like, "Oh, these are the two worst fan bases." I mean, I don't think Ohio State is the worst fan base, but like Ohio State's fan base is as a whole is obnoxious because it's massive. Like you have I mean, it's one of the largest universities that them in Texas go back and forth and who has the highest enrollment. And so as a result, you have alumni all over the country. Then you have so many people in Ohio who didn't go to Ohio State who
Myself included.
are Ohio State fans. I mean, if I didn't go there, that would have been me. I grew up a Buckeyes fan, so I would have still been a Buckeyes fan. But then you also do have a decent amount of front running fans too. Like, people kids who grew up with Ohio State being a dominant force in college football who, just start rooting for them. So, they got a huge fan base. My issue with Stephen Hayden was the helmet sticker slander that did not sit well with me and irritated me way more than it should have. Like I like these people who always say like, well, it doesn't bother me, but they can't stop talking about it. Like when
At least you
when
admit it bothers you.
yeah, like when Brady Hoke would always refer to Ohio State as just Ohio, and that's become a thing that Michigan does. And I had to hear like all these Ohio State fans tell me nonstop 24/7 about how much it didn't annoy them and that it was just dumb and how stupid it was. And it doesn't bother me. It's stupid. And it's like, dude, all you do is talk about how much it doesn't bother you. Clearly it bothers you. So yeah, the helmet sticker thing, like making fun of the helmet stickers really bothered me, especially because I love that tradition. I think it's awesome. It's not unique to Ohio State either. There are plenty of other teams who do helmet stickers, and to me, it's a cool part of college football. Like it's still something that kind of separates college football from professional football.
But Andrew, we were talking about Anxious.
Yeah. Anyways, so
By
yeah,
the
so
way,
Ian,
I had to look it up. I loved that record from 2022, Little Green House. So I was
yeah,
in on that one.
I was as well. I mean,
But I
I
had
did
to look
listen
it
to.
up. I kind of forgot about it.
I forgot that it was Anxious until you just mentioned that. And I was like, oh yeah, that's where I know Anxious from.
So this
But
is one of those times where the album cover will absolutely
yeah,
bring you right back. This
yeah,
was an
I
iconic
knew it by
album
the
cover.
album title. But I remember as soon as you said it, I know what the album cover was too. But yeah, so they've put out a couple singles that I'll admit have not really grabbed me that much, but they are getting a lot of hype I'm seeing online, not just Ian Cohen, but I've seen some Stereo Gum commenters talk about it. I've seen it just on Twitter and various places. I've just kind of seen some rumblings about it. So
Well,
that
I
could
definitely
be
skew emo more than you do.
right. Yep. So it could be a little bit more your wheelhouse than mine, but we'll see. I'll certainly give it a listen because I'm dying for new music right now.
So one of the things kind of unrelated to music, but I'm a little bit under the weather, and so I wasn't planning on doing dry January. But when you're sick, you don't really feel like drinking anyway. So I'm kind of accidentally doing dry January. But I hit that point, and you and I are both in our 40s. But I hit that point. I'm on day like
mid. It's not even
mid,
early. We hit
yeah.
mid 40s.
But I hit the day 8 or day 9, whatever I am right now, where I'm like, I really don't miss alcohol. Alcohol really doesn't do much for me. I feel a lot better not drinking. It just made me think about dry January and all that kind of stuff. Did you know anybody in college who didn't drink?
Man, yeah, I had a roommate who didn't drink. He is currently a super successful endocrinologist in Las Vegas, and I see on his social media he travels all over the world, and he's just living his life, and he spent a lot of time studying and did not do much partying, and
Yeah.
so I know one person, but that's it.
So I guess my point being that, like, I think the American culture's relationship to alcohol has actually changed quite substantially since you and I were in our teens. I bet there's a lot of 20 somethings who don't drink, who do dry January, who, kind of weighed the cost benefit and just decided, nah, I don't need this.
I mean, you want me to sound like an old man? Like you have to get off Fortnite to go to this to go get to go get alcohol. No, I think it's a fair point. I mean, even in terms of like smoking, like the smoking numbers are just jarring how low they are amongst young people, which is fantastic. But like, holy cow, like our age group, like everybody smoked, so like I don't know, like I think it's just sort of I think we did a lot of, or we picked up a lot of vices because we were more bored. We didn't have constant stimulation. And so we looked for, other avenues to get that. And I think a lot of younger people are just so overstimulated that they don't need it as much now. I mean, I'm sure plenty of people will still drink and do still drink, but you see the numbers, like anytime they show these studies, like all those numbers are going down. So it is a cultural shift for sure.
It's so interesting to me because, dry January wasn't a thing for us growing up.
Yeah.
And now it's such an overblown thing that you not only have so many people doing it, but then you've got the other people saying, hey, stop telling me about your dry January. Nobody
Yeah.
cares. To the point where I just love that about American culture, where something is like, oh, yeah, did you hear about this thing? Did you hear about this thing? Until it becomes so overdone that they're like, shut up about the thing. Just shut
Yeah.
up.
Like I mean, even in my 30s, I drank less than I did in my 20s. Now, in my 40s, I really don't drink a whole lot anymore, especially beer. Like, I just don't drink beer very often. But I'm not partaking in dry January. Every Ohio State victory in the playoffs I've celebrated with a old fashioned here at home, and if Ohio State wins on Monday, I'm going to partake probably quite a bit in celebration that night. So it's I'm not partaking per se, but I mean, look, part of it is, the older you get, the more, all your friends have other things going on and you're just not getting together and drinking as much as you used to. But another part of it too is just the recovery from it sucks. Like it hits you so much harder the next day. And I'm kind of with you. Like, I think like, I don't even think I feel as good drinking as I did in my 20s, like it sort of changes the way it makes you feel. Like it somehow makes me just feel older when I drink. So I
No,
don't
I
know.
think that's true as well. And it's, there's just a certain amount of experience too. It's
Yeah.
like I've been drunk at the rock concert. I've been drunk at the Browns game. I've been drunk at the party.
Yeah.
There's nothing new I can do with alcohol.
Church, tried church.
I do, I don't regularly
get,
go to
get,
church, but now I've
get,
got a goal. Now I've got a way to go to church that I've never gone to church before. That's really how you become a problematic alcoholic, is when you
yes.
start, like, preschool pickup. Never been drunk at preschool
Yeah,
pickup.
there we go. Oh man, maybe I'll give drunken basketball coaching a shot. Show up hammered to a
Have you
game.
ever seen Hoosiers?
Yeah,
Didn't go so well for Gene
no,
Hackman and his assistant coach there.
yeah, but hey, it's an experience, right?
Okay. Well, that isn't really what you and I aim to talk about today. The
Oh, this
interest
isn't an entire episode about dry January and drinking.
No.
Oh, okay.
No. One of the cool things about getting older and turning the clock to 2025 is looking back and seeing what are all the 30-year anniversaries that we're going to get to do. And so I think, this podcast will explore a lot of 30th anniversary episodes talking about records from 1995. But before we do any individual records, I thought it'd be interesting to just kind of look at the top 100 hot rock song chart from 1995, just to kind of chat about how different the landscape was in 95 versus the way the 90s entered, or even how they kind of peaked in 92, 93. I think you and I might, well, first of all, do you agree that the 90s peaked in 92 or 93, maybe 94? And 95 was the
Yeah, I feel like
first year of the descent.
94 was the peak, but that was, that was Soundgarden put out Super Unknown, Pearl Jam did Vitology, and, Kurt Cobain passed away. And like all intents and purposes, like it really, like Kurt Cobain's suicide was a total vibe shift for sure. And I don't think 95, it, especially back then, it seemed like bands took a lot longer to make albums. I don't think they had time for 95 to be I think 96 is probably more of a reactionary year to that vibe shift that we had. But what's interesting about 95, and particularly when you look at the Hot 100 and some of these things, like you really see the second wave of grunge coming in. The bands that were heavily influenced by those early 90s rock bands. So, whether that be Seven Mary 3, Presidents of the United States of America, Bush, like even like Filter put out an album in 95, like
Silverchair, bro.
Silverchair, Everclear, you really are and then you also have like also some of the things that aren't influenced by that era, but were sort of like a different direction for music entirely. Like Alanis Morissette, Jagged Little Pill was that year. Oasis, What's the Story, Morning Glory was that year.
Or even
No doubt.
take a peak grunge band like Smashing Pumpkins.
Yeah.
1979 didn't sound like anything they'd ever done before.
Yep. But yeah, No Doubt, Tragic Kingdom came out that year. Radiohead, The Bends was certainly a monumental shift in the musical landscape. So
yeah, and spoiler alert, the Bends will get its own episode.
Yeah, so like it was just this like weird time that like I don't think so like Pearl Jam didn't have an album in 95, Soundgarden didn't have an album in 95. Well, Pearl Jam did have Merkenball, the EP with I Got It and Long Road, but they didn't put out a proper album unless you want to count Mirror Ball, which they did with Neil Young, but I don't know if that really counts.
But for an EP, Merkenball was hugely impactful.
Yes, a very, very successful EP for them. Oh well, I guess Alice in Chains did have an album in 95. I was thinking none of the like major bands did, but like Stone Temple Pilots didn't have 95. But yeah, Alice in Chains did and they had Tripod, which will also get its own episode. So
yeah, it's interesting because if you had asked me, if you would have asked me if some of those bands would have hit this chart in 95, even as like the aftershocks of 93 or 94, I would have said so.
Well, Pearl Jam did.
Well, Pearl Jam
because Vitology came out so late in 94, so you had like Better Man and
big money that Stone Temple Pilots would have been on this somewhere.
So they are
Unglued is all the way down at number 50.
Yeah. There's actually a couple other ones that were on there too. I'm pretty sure some buried on that
But you get
list
my
somewhere.
point. Like
But I do, I
I
do.
still
Like
felt
they,
like they were one of the biggest bands in the world in '95, and maybe they
yeah,
were, but just not on radio anymore.
like Soundgarden not being on this list was definitely interesting. Mm, especially with the success of Super Unknown, that nothing carried over into '95 from that. But I think it was such a weird it was such a weird time. Like I even remember, like, because it was just such a weird thing to have all these bands coming out who were just so clearly influenced. Like Silverchair was clearly influenced by Nirvana. I mean, as much as they grew to hate that comparison, and I get why, but like they were clearly heavily influenced. I mean, their very name, the silver in Silverchair, is partially from the Nirvana song Sliver. They had written down the name Sliver, but accidentally switched the I and L and stuck with it. Foo Fighters debut album came out in '95. Clearly, I mean, obviously, like with Dave, like there's influence there from what he was doing
Yeah.
with Nirvana. Seven Mary Three, like they were carrying the vocal stylings, like trying to mimic the sort of Eddie Vedder, Lane Staley
So
kind
that
of.
one pissed me off. Did Seven Mary Three like I could hear the quality in the songwriting, but it felt like such a put on,
It,
or such a specific vocal style that if I ever heard Cumbersome on the radio, I would change the station because I couldn't handle that song.
so I loved Cumbersome. I have to be honest. I
It's a
loved that
great
song.
song,
Like it
but
was,
the
but I
vocals
get
were
what you're
just like,
saying,
I
because
used
you're
to
not
love to
wrong
do an
about that.
impression of it
Yeah.
because it was just hysterical to make fun of the way he just growled his voice up in such a unnatural put on kind of a way, and maybe that's how the dude sings. I don't know, but
Yeah. What was another big one that was clearly influenced by grunge was Bush, 16 Stone, coming out
big time.
that year as well. That was clearly influenced by the grunge movement, and like I like that was the one that I resented. I resented Bush, and again, it's not so much the vocal delivery, but to me, like so many of those songs just felt like, to me, I just in my youth thought of them as cheap grunge ripoff songs. Like to me, it just sounded like a band just trying to find some space between like Stone Temple Pilots and Nirvana or something like that. Like it just didn't jive with me when it came out. I grew to really respect Bush. I really enjoyed Razorblade Suitcase, The Science of Things. I really liked that. Golden State. Like they put out albums that I really liked, but just 16 Stone was one that I didn't like at all.
Yeah, and I liked it. It definitely sounded derivative to me. Um, but those were the days where I was reading Spin magazine and Rolling Stone, and so I kind of knew that Gavin had been floating around the music scene, and he met his guitar player Nigel, who had become the guitar player for Bush back in like 90 or 91. He wrote Come Down in 90 or 91. And it just took those 2 or 3 years while everything, it was very similar to the live story, from going from Mental Jewelry to whatever that, Throwing Copper,
Yeah.
where they were a band and they wrote songs and they were influenced by the sound in terms of like turning the guitars up and everything else, which feels more environmental than like aping.
Yeah.
Then again, if you don't come first, you don't come first. If you come second or third wave, you come second or
That's
third wave, and you got to deal with the fallout.
that's certainly true. And Live was one that, I mean, they had the number one song of '95.
Yeah, let's go through the list a little bit.
Yeah,
So
sure.
the number one song from '95 was "Lightning Crashes" by Live.
Which Throwing Copper came out in '94,
It did.
but that song hit in '95, and I think they had a couple other ones that are on the list too.
Well, and same with Pearl Jam. "Better Man" was number two.
Yep. So again, another '94 carryover.
And that one kind of bugged me because I felt like there were other songs that would have been better, more worthy singles. My elitist Pearl
like
Jam fandom
I think
didn't
we talked
love.
about this when we did our Vitology episode. Like I understand to some degree the appeal of that song, but like it is certainly not one of my favorite songs on Vitology at all.
Number 3, Green Day, When I Come Around.
Which is another 94 carryover. That one was on Dookie. And they did have an album in 95. Insomniac came out in 95, but that one is a carryover from Dookie.
What's the biggest song from Insomniac?
Brain Stew and Jaded.
Yeah,
Or,
that's it.
well, also Geek Stink Breath was another big one off that. Yeah, but Brain Stew and Jaded.
It probably charted in 96.
Yeah.
It's surprising that Wonderwall is 4. Wonderwall wasn't higher, because I felt like Wonderwall was the song of 94 that I felt like I couldn't escape. That and Lightning Crashes for sure.
It does seem like Wonderwall should be number 1 or 2. Like, just if you would have asked me the defining song of that year, like, I probably would have said Wonderwall. Like, it was everywhere. And it's like, to me, it's a fairly mid song on that album. Like, there's much better songs on Morning
I think
Glory.
the video for Lightning Crashes did better on MTV than the video for Wonderwall did. And so I think that had a huge impact.
The Lightning Crashes video is way more intriguing, for sure.
And ubiquitous. Like, MTV never stopped playing it.
Yeah, absolutely.
So then we got 1979. We got December by Collective Soul.
Oh yeah, that was another one. That's a 95 album. Their self-titled their second album, which probably probably my second favorite Collective Soul album.
Yeah. And you for those who don't remember, Andrew goes deep on Collective Soul.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
I mean, not absolutely. You say absolutely. Oh, of course. It's true, but most people wouldn't expect it.
That is true.
It's an unexpected goes deep type of a band.
Like, people who know me in real life know how much I love Collective Soul. I've certainly taken my fair share of ribbing about it. Like, people who think they're a very uncool band, and they are an uncool band, fine. But
like the circle overlap between Deaf Heaven fans and Collective Soul fans is like
one of
Andrew.
one.
And then here's another one that I would have guessed, just because it was so ubiquitous on the radio, that it would have been higher than number 7, and that's Name by the Goo Goo Dolls. That song was everywhere. It had the full crossover appeal because it was played on adult contemporary, it was played on alternative rock.
I think it's important to remember, like, Goo Goo Dolls were coming out of a punk background. Like, the album before this, the Car Wash one,
Superstar Car Wash,
like, was a borderline punk album. Like, there were some very heavy punk leanings on that album. And A Boy Named Goo, which came out in 95.
But I think Superstar Car Wash, was it Paul Westerberg that they worked with on We Are the Normal? And he really kind of set them on the pop sensibility.
Yeah, for sure. And that's what I was saying. Like, A Boy Named Goo still has some absolute rock songs on it. But it was definitely them starting to let Robbie expand.
Sing a couple, right?
Yeah, exactly. And that's where, is it the last track on A Boy Named Goo that he sings on? That's such a good song. It's been so long since I've listened to that album. But anyways, that was just really like this era of Goo Goo Dolls sort of expanding into a, like you said, a pop sensibility, but like they still had rock songs. So I think they also, like, that album as a whole could appeal to a lot of different types of music fans.
Yeah.
I still stand by it. It's a good album. I don't care what anybody says. A Boy Named Goo is a good album. So
when I was on my trip to Boston with a friend of mine, he asked me if I was a fan of the Goo Goo Dolls. He's like, I can usually peg you, and I have no idea whether you're going to say yes or no to the Goo Goo Dolls. I'm an unabashed Goo Goo Dolls fan. I know some of their later work is cheesy, and it's like they're writing prom songs or movie songs or whatever else, but I love them. They don't perform live very well. Like, Johnny Resnick takes notes off or hits lower notes rather than going for the big notes he does in the studio, which irritates me sometimes. But I love the Goo Dolls. I don't feel like I should, but I do.
I think it's fine. Like, I'm for it. Like, I didn't go any further past A Boy Named Goo. Like, I don't even remember the name of their album that came after it. Like that was just it. But anyways, I was just looking here. Slave Girl was the song I was thinking of, by the way, the
See, and
last
I
track on.
saw that, and I was nervous to even say the name of the song.
Okay. But yeah, but look, dude, the singles on this one, Only One, Flat Top, Name, Naked, Long Way Down, like those are all good songs. Like there's
Yeah, it was a killer record.
yeah. Yeah. So
All right, we got In the Meantime by Space Hog, one of the best singles from the entire 90s.
my favorite true one-hit wonder. That song is incredible.
Did you buy that record? Did you force yourself to like the rest of the
So
record?
at some point I bought it in a used record store and I might have sold it back. I'm not
Oh,
sure.
that was a dollar bin staple, Space
Yeah.
Hog.
Yeah. Yeah, I
I
mean, I
got
hate to say it. The album
yeah.
is it's a tough listen. It just is. It's that there are some other songs that are fine, like even good on it, but like as a whole, that album is it's a tough listen. And like especially when you have a song as great as In the Meantime, like you're just I don't know, like you hear about like these bands that just fall into a song, and like I feel like that's kind of what happened there. But it's
Yeah,
an
well,
incredible song.
I mean the falsetto that follows the guitar lead and all that kind of stuff, it's just iconic. Just absolutely iconic. I Got Id by Pearl Jam. You and I obviously are crazy Pearl Jam fans. My only regret about that is that they didn't take the headspace they were in when they did that EP and do a full record. Just what they were doing there. If they could have expanded it to 8 or 9 songs, it would have been that. I feel like that would have given us our man. What's the Alice in Chains one?
Jar of Flies.
Jar of Flies. We had our Pearl Jam
Yeah.
Jar of Flies.
Yeah, but they couldn't because they were in Neil Young's recording space. They did that. They recorded those like while they were in the middle of recording Mirror Ball with Neil. They just recorded a couple of tracks of their own out of that.
I know, but they could have.
You know,
Neil would have
but
let them.
like, yeah, but like, what a year! Like you're recording an album with like Neil Young invites you to be his backing band on an entire album, not a guest appearance on a song. Like he's like, you know, forget Crazy Horse. Like I'm doing this album with you guys, and had to be quite an experience, I'd imagine.
For a lot of bands, it would have been career suicide. It's not a smart move.
Yeah,
It's
maybe.
it's something you do because above all else, you are a fan and you're going to do
Yeah,
what you would do as a fan, not because it's the smartest business move. I'm sure
yeah.
there were people at the label going, "What are you guys doing?" Tearing their hair out.
I'm sure. I'm sure, but I don't actually know. It's something that I don't have many blind spots in my Pearl Jam knowledge, but like I don't believe Pearl Jam had that much input in the writing of that album. I think it was pretty much all written by Neil and they just recorded it as his band. Which I mean, I'm sure you can even hear it in the music. Like they add their own creative style of playing, but the songs
Flourishes.
themselves, but the songs themselves, I'm pretty sure Neil pretty much wrote all of that album. But
All right, and last of the top 10, honestly, a really great U2 song. Hold me, thrill me, kiss me, kill me.
from the Batman Forever,
Forever?
I think that's which Batman it was.
I think so
The
too.
soundtrack. It sounds right to me. Was that the same one that because that was the same one that had the Kiss from a Rose, right? Like the Seal song Kiss from a Rose, which by the way, talk about songs that were ubiquitous in 1995. That
Yeah.
Seal song, my goodness. But no, Hold Me, Thrill Me, Kiss Me, Kill Me, incredible song. Love that U2 song.
It a lot of those songs got overplayed, but now 30 years later, you can kind of look back at them and yeah, whether or not it was overplayed, it was legit.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was Batman Forever.
Batman Forever, yeah.
I
Which
mean, the
was a pretty
Batman
massive
movies
soundtrack. That
had
was
pretty
a
good
pretty
soundtracks.
massive soundtrack. Was there even a Goo Goo Dolls song on that one?
I'm looking it up right now.
Okay. I almost feel like there was maybe a Goo Goo Dolls song on that one. I mean, obviously they had what was the what was their like true breakout song that they had was Goo Goo Dolls was a soundtrack song.
From City of Angels.
Yeah, so maybe I can't believe I can't think of the name of that song right now.
Iris.
Yeah, yeah.
All right, this is going to blow your mind. The
Okay.
Batman Forever soundtrack. U2, PJ Harvey,
Oh, what PJ Harvey song?
One Time Too Many.
Okay. Which, by the way, she put out "To Bring You My Love" in 1995, which was kind of her breakout album. So that was a big year for Polly Jean.
R&B superstar Brandy. Nobody was bigger than Brandy in 95. Kiss from a Rose by Seal. This says Massive Attack and somebody. I don't know who Eddie Reader is. Mazzy Star has a song.
Oh,
The Offspring.
really? The Offspring?
Smash It Up.
Which
Nick Cave.
Was the Offspring in 95?
I don't know. We'll have to look it up.
I'm gonna check that while you're giving us that.
I'm going to blow your mind with one of these though. Nick Cave, Method Man, Michael Hutchence.
Wow.
The Devlins.
Wait. Had he passed away already at that point?
I don't think so, but I don't know.
Okay.
So then the Devlins, who I've never heard of. The Flaming Lips have a song on there. And then last but not least, Sunny Day Real Estate.
Whoa.
I know.
Whoa.
I was like, what?
Outlier. What an outlier. How?
How
did they get on there? Wow. Well, anyways, what an eclectic soundtrack, though. That's pretty awesome.
This is also 1995, by the way. 1995 could be described completely and totally by the soundtrack to Batman Forever.
Yeah. I mean,
we've got U2,
R&B, rock,
grunge,
rap,
indie rock, emo, all together.
Goodness. Wow.
Well, I mean, you talk about today where modern music at the top of the charts, it's all pop stars and rap, really, and country. Pop stars, rap, and country. It just goes to show how much the world's changed in the last 30 years in terms of rock music. There's still lots of rock music out there. It's just all segmented.
It's none of it's going to make any top 100 lists,
right?
Know. But yeah, there's some like pretty. Oh, by the way, Offspring did not have a 95 album.
That was a 94.
Smash was 94, and then Ixnay on the Ombre was not until I think 97. But some other kind of interesting ones that came out that year. One that means a lot to me personally was Rancid and Out Come the Wolves. Truly a
iconic album cover.
Absolutely. One of the all-time greatest album covers. And that was such a transformative album for me. That was like, I was dabbling in punk prior to that, but that was my true gateway drug, like getting me just full bore into listening to just tons and tons and tons of punk music was that Rancid album. I still remember I went to Walmart and bought it, and I don't think I stopped listening to it for like 2 months. It was just on repeat nonstop every day. Like it was all I wanted to listen to. So that was a big one for me. Another one, which to me, anytime I listen to this album, I can immediately get thrown back into the headset of myself as a high schooler. This album sounds like high school to me, and that's Ozzy's Osmosis. I mean, the opening run on this album, Perry Mason, I Just Want You, Ghost Behind My Eyes, Thunder Underground, See You on the Other Side. Like, that is an absolute Murderer's Row gauntlet of incredible songs, which were just, I think Ghost Behind My Eyes was the only one that wasn't a massive radio hit, but Perry Mason, I Just Want You, Thunder Underground, See You on the Other Side tomorrow. Like, these songs were just enormous, and man, they just take me right back to high school. I don't listen to a ton of Ozzy solo albums, nor do I even really listen to a ton of Black Sabbath for that matter, but Osmosis is like my go-to when I want to listen to Ozzy.
Yeah, it's interesting because that was one that obviously we weren't there when Black Sabbath came out.
Right.
And if you were paying attention in the record store, you could get these kind of re-releases, that the cheesy covers where they would re-release these classic records, and Black Sabbath was one of the ones that I did that with. I didn't listen to a lot of quote unquote classic rock when I was in the 90s, but Ozzy was one that I had to go back and listen to. And it's just, one of those classic records. So I think the last thing that we should do, I went and I hit the fast forward button to 1996 just because I wanted to see what kinds of things that we just talked about also charted in 96.
Okay.
Because I find it interesting that Cumbersome by Seven Mary 3 was number 4 in 1996.
Oh my goodness. Holy
so
cow.
it peaked in 96, not 95.
So I am blind on this. I'm going to try and guess number 1 for 1996. Is it Dave Matthews Band?
Nope.
So because I'm pretty sure Crash came out in 96, and that album was enormous. So I would have thought something off of that would have been on there.
I was 67.
Wow. Okay.
So number 1 was One Headlight by the Wallflowers.
Ugh.
Number 2 was Until It Sleeps by Metallica.
Okay.
I actually think the Wallflowers have aged better than I hated them, kind of hated them in the moment.
Yeah.
I think they sound better today. I think the Wallflowers and Gin Blossom sound better to me today than they did to me in the moment.
I sort of have a similar feeling about Wallflowers as I did with Bush, where I really hate One Headlight. I hate that. I still hate that song. I think
it's a great song, whether you like it or not. I understand why you might not like it, but I think it hits all of the notes that I can understand why
I struggle with it. But whatever their album after that was like, I remember kind of liking some stuff off of that one. And that's, to me, that's kind of how Bush was, where I hated 16 Stone, but then I really liked Razor. Like, I owned Razorblade Suitcase. Like, I went out and bought that album.
But the best thing about the Wallflowers was 6th Avenue Heartache, where they got Adam Duritz from Counting Crows to sing the high harmonies, and then they toured together, and that was the tour where apparently in the middle of it they stopped getting along. They didn't like each other. So the other one, so Cumbersome charted higher in 96 than 95, and so did In the Meantime, which was number 5.
Huh. That's interesting too.
I didn't see that coming.
No, you see them on these 95 lists, and to me, both of those seemed about right. Like, I guess I didn't remember Cumbersome was that big of a song that it would be number 4 for an entire year. Like, but I mean, it does make sense though, from the standpoint that 96 was even further removed from grunge. By 96, we're talking Pearl Jam's putting out No Code, which is totally like moving away from their earlier grunge sound. Soundgarden puts out Down on the Upside, which sounds totally different, and then they break up. It was just, that was 96 is truly the year that like grunge is just pretty much gone at that point.
Everything changed. Yeah. Oh, well, I'm super excited to explore the 95 records this year. For the next few years, it's going to make lots and lots of sense for you and me to go back 30 years. And then at some point, we're going to be too old and crusty. We're going to have to go back 35 years or 40 years and redo albums.
It is funny that we I actually do remember when Pearl Jam's 10 had its 10-year anniversary. And I remember thinking how crazy it was that, man, I've been listening to Pearl Jam for 10 years.
10 years.
Man, that's so weird. 10 years. Like, that is a lifetime. And, and here we say, now 10 is 30 years. Well,
we've been listening to Def Heaven for 10 years.
Yeah, which is all, man, that's crazy. So yeah, I don't know. That's just funny. That we went from celebrating a lot of these as 10-year anniversary albums, then 20-year anniversary albums. Probably some of these we probably even did 25 years, and now we're talking 30 years. We don't have to talk about them, but I compiled this list of some of these 95 albums, and there's 2 of them on my list that I didn't mention at all, so I just want to mention them
Yeah,
as
let's do it, and then we'll
because I
finish
think
out.
they're both actually interesting albums. One is Faith No More's King for a Day, Fool for a Lifetime, which is just a ridiculously great album. Like from a musician's perspective, like it is just a ridiculously great album.
All right, so I'm gonna here's my Faith No More story. I loved the first one, not the it was no, I
Epic.
loved the Real Thing, which
Oh
had
yeah.
Epic and Falling to Pieces. I listened to Angel Dust and I liked it, but my friends who were really phenomenal musicians loved it more than I did, and I always felt bad about myself that I didn't get it the way that they got it. And so then by the time
I
you got
really
to
love
King
Angel
for a
Dust.
Day, Fool for a Lifetime, I gave up and I just assumed that it was my own deficit, that somehow I wasn't getting Faith No More in a way that they deserved. So
Okay.
it's my fault, not Faith No More's fault.
Have you ever gone back and listened to this album?
No.
Like you should listen to this one. Like I
Maybe
can
at
under
45 I'm finally ready.
I can understand where you're coming from on Angel Dust. I love Angel Dust, but I understand where you're coming from on it. But I think King for a Day is sort of a like not a return to form because it doesn't sound like Real Thing, but it's much more of just a rock album that I actually think you might like it. You should.
And also, again, one of the greatest album covers.
Yeah.
So cool.
Incredible album cover. And then, well, again, speaking of awesome album covers, I love this album cover. But one I'm actually surprised we didn't talk about before this is Mad Season Above came out in
Yeah.
95. And just
We're
like
going to have to talk about that one.
it makes sense, like again, with some of the things we're talking about, like the death of grunge. Like we're literally talking about an album that was made from members of huge grunge bands meeting in rehab, right? Like, so I mean, there was clearly an issue that took its toll on grunge music, and I think we've talked about this in the past, but I understand not everybody has listened to every one of our episodes. But like as much as we love grunge music and we talk about it with a sort of almost like a folklore mythological type of thing, like we talk about how inspiring it was to us as kids, but like it is a bummer to me as a 45-year-old now to look back and just realize how much wreckage came out of the grunge movement. Like so many people from that era are dead, like quite literally. Like we're talking like from of the singers who are still with us, we've got Ed and we've got Billy Corgan. Like that's it. I mean, maybe
And
I mean, if you want to
Jerry
count
Cantrell.
Jerry Cantrell, I mean, he was not the lead vocalist, but he certainly had his vocals all over
Yeah.
Alice in Chains. But like, that's it. Like, and that's just crazy. You know, just we've
Yeah.
lost so many people from that era way too soon. So that's why, like, to me, like Above is always like this interesting thing to me because it is this, you know, this thing that like really creative album that came out of a difficult situation. And it's just sad that like, so Lane would do this and then he would record Tripod around the same time, and that was it. Like, and then we lost Lane, you know. And it's we'll talk about that one more. I think I would probably like to do a whole episode on that, or at least a half episode if maybe we combine a couple of these at some point.
Yeah.
But
One Mad Season is one that I actually wrote about on the site. So
yeah,
I have all my research put together. It'll
there
be
we go.
perfect.
There we go.
I mean, but the timing of it all is just so unbelievable. How short the grunge era truly was,
Yes.
and you know how quickly it died out, figuratively and literally.
Isn't it weird how like I'm sorry, I don't mean to interrupt. I'll let you finish
No,
that thought.
no, that was it.
Okay. Well, I was just gonna say, like, I think it's funny when you think about like our perspectives on time too, that like our entire high school existence feels like an era of my life, like a massive chapter of my life. And then the five, in my case, 5 years of college was another massive, hugely like influential chapter in my life. But like today, 4 years, like that's a presidential term, which those fly by like that. Like, you know, like it seems like it was just yesterday Biden got elected and now he's done. already now. 4 or 5 years is nothing to me. It's a blip on the radar at this point in my life. And I think that's why that like grunge seems so long to us, because for us, like, it consumed our entire high school existence and even junior or like middle school too.
Yep.
Like, it was.
Well, I've got kids, you've got nieces and nephews, you're now coaching seventh graders. You're going to snap your fingers and those kids are going to be graduating high school.
I
You're going to
know.
watch them play varsity.
I know. Like, my oldest niece is in college, which is just crazy to me. She's a freshman, and that's just so insane to me. Like, time makes no sense. But
yeah, and 30 years is not even the beginning of grunge. 30 years ago is now the tail end of it.
Yeah.
Well, I'm looking forward to it.
I do. I'll tell a quick funny story.
All right.
We had basketball practice last night.
One of my favorite dad jokes, by the way, is, yeah, you tell the story. I'll decide if it's funny.
That's fair, because it's probably not as funny like as I think it is. But anyways, one of the players on our team was wearing a Bon Jovi tour shirt from 2011, and yeah, and it was funny because my buddy, who's the head coach of the team, he's like, look at it, he's like, man, he's like, I think I went on that tour. Like, he's like, I think I was at that Bon Jovi show. So he texted his wife and he's like, did we go to that Bon Jovi show? And she's like, yeah, that was my birthday. Like that. So sure enough, they were at that show that now this 7th grade kid is ironically wearing to basketball practice. It was obviously his dad's shirt from that tour. He's like, oh yeah. He's like, well, my parents were at that show. But so yeah, okay. It wasn't a funny story, but it was an interesting story.
I mean, that's incredible. Like I expected. I've gotten used to a throwback, is it ironic, Nirvana t-shirts everywhere.
Yeah.
I didn't expect Bon Jovi. I didn't expect Bon Jovi at all.
But so my buddy asked him then, he's like, how old were you then? And he like stops for a second. He goes, well, I was in the womb. And like, it's like that was the first time it hit me that I was coaching people who are not alive in 2010, 2011. Like, what?
Oh my God, that's crazy.
That's so bizarre to me. Like,
maybe he was conceived at the Bon Jovi show.
That's what my buddy said.
Bon Jovi has a way of doing things to people, you just can't help yourself.
That's right.
He starts the opening notes to Bed of Roses. And
yeah, it's over.
It's over. It's over. All right. And this is also now over. We appreciate you guys joining us. We have so much fun doing this. Make sure you subscribe, leave a rating and review, share it with a friend, do all the things that help us make this thing go and grow. We're going to really enjoy throwing a bunch of these together for 2025. If you ever have any suggestions, something that you think we should talk about, let us know, and maybe we'll do it. So until next time, it's been the Album of Record podcast.